Hey guys, so yeah, the other day I was sitting having no idea what exactly was going to happen with all of our finances and everything like that, and I wanted to do an update, at least for me, because about 2 weeks ago we had about $4,000 to $5,000 due, and only about $2,000 to work with. So the chain of events was like on Friday, I think the 15th or something like that, we were supposed to, or maybe it was a Tuesday, we were supposed to meet with a property manager, and the problem is that our $975 house rent was due that day, and no further. It was already a little late, and the rent here at the store is due. And it was already late, $1,500. This is why we had the GoFundMe campaign, trying to raise money for this stuff. Then we had about $450 due on a car payment that was due that day, like repossession, like it was late. And then we had $430 due on the electricity here, and they were shutting off on the 16th. So all of those things were due that day, and we only had $1,800 to work with, and we just were praying that God would provide and bring through everything, and He didn't. He didn't bring in a giant sack of money or a mega check or anything like that. But I had faith that if I just went into the situation, just kind of went into a free fall, and just went to people, that I'd just be like, well, I'm going to see if people are just going to throw us out, kick us out, shut things off, whatever. So me and Cora decided that day we need to guard our house and we need to guard our car and the electricity more than anything. The property manager here at the store can wait, which, we came up with this idea of let's pay the rent at the house. Let's pay the electric at the store. That way, if we do keep it open, we have electricity, because it does no good to have the rent on the store paid if the electric is shut off. And the electric company won't budge, because we haven't had a long enough history with them, so they won't give us any extensions until we've had, a year of service with them or whatever. Who knows? So I go into my closet, I'm praying, and God's just like, I want you to take $1,500 to the property manager at the store. And I was like, well, that's going to put everything else in jeopardy, but okay, I'm just trusting God, and it says in Scripture, we plan our ways and God decides our steps, which means we plan what we're going to do, and then God puts His final signature on it and says, okay, here's what actually is happening. And it's good that we plan. It really is. It's not a waste of time to plan. But the idea is that took the check, came to meet with the property manager. I'm so glad that I did. Because when I sat down to meet with the property manager, he's polite, he's wonderful, he's an amazing guy, he really supports the store, but he was in a financially tight spot. He couldn't go any further into waiting with us. It was either the check that day or nothing. And we were already 45 days late, so he had already waited a month and then given us an extra 2 weeks. So I needed to give him the check that day, otherwise it would have left. So if I would have gone through with my plan, paid the house, come here, pay the electric, and then come to him with a $600 check in my hands, it wouldn't have cut it. So I'm glad that I listened to God in that, because that worked. It was like, oh goodness, okay. But here's the problem. We now have the rent, the car, and there. And what is it going to do if we have the store, if we don't have a place to sleep or a car to drive here? But the next thing that God put on my heart was pay the electric, because I had enough after, the rent was paid to pay the electric. And so I did. Well, that left us with no money left to pay the rent at our house or to pay the car. So the good thing is my wife called the car place. They gave us an extension till the 21st, because she said, hey, we'll direct deposit the money in or whatever. Complete faith move. And it's really hard sometimes, because you don't want to lie and say that you have the money if you don't. At the same time, there's moments where you're operating in faith and hope. And it's a really difficult thing, because the secular world doesn't understand that. We can't call the car company and be like, hi, we don't have the money now, but we're believing in faith in Jesus' name that we will on the 21st, So we basically have to say we're expecting money to come in, then we'll pay it then. And I feel at peace about doing that, because I'm not anyways, whatever. It's just a tough spot to be in when the world is broken. You know, we want to own everything that we can, and we want to be honest with people, and we also want to explain it in their language. So the 21st came around, no money. And it really sucked because I had told our house rent place, hey, we're going to be getting paid Monday or whatever. I believe that we'll have some money coming in, which we were supposed to from some of the GoFundMe stuff that came in, but not nearly enough to cover the rent. And it just didn't. It just didn't come in. So it was that day, and I said, okay, I'm going to be honest with you. Here's where we're at. And I woke up that morning, and I was like, well, I'm just going to talk to the property managers there and just be direct with them where we're at. I don't want to lie. I don't want to hide anything. I was having faith more money would come in, but I'm just going to be where I'm at. And I sat down with one of my housemates, and he was pointing out, and he said, you know, staying here has been crazy because it's been $400 in electric, which is insane, $400. It only costs about $300 here at the store, and it's 2,000 square feet. And the reason that is because the house we're in right now is a prefabricated. It's one that's just kind of put together, not insulated, not anything like that. It's a modular home. And so it retains nothing. So it's either too cold or it's too hot. And I'm not complaining. We've been there. We've been grateful for the house. But it's been about $400 in electric bills because we're using space heaters to heat the house and the swamp coolers, you call them, the in-window air conditioners to cool the house. Otherwise, it's too stuffy to be in there. It's too warm. Or when it does drop, the temperature drops, it's too cold. There's no, like, central heating, and there's, like, no insulation in the place. So it's been about $1,500 to be, or it's been about like $950 to be at the house, and then like $350 to $400 in electric. And so we had a thought come across our brain that didn't come across my brain any other time, and that was, why don't we just let go of the house and find a different place to live? Well, a year ago, when we just moved to Redding and we didn't have the ability to do this stuff, or like we didn't have the credit, the work history, or anything like that, the house was a miracle. I'm still thankful for it. But the idea is like, oh man, wait a minute. It's been a year. I have the store now. Cora's been gainfully employed for a year through VIP Kid. Yeah, why don't we just look for a different place to stay? You know, an apartment or something that's closer. I'm going to BSSM next year, so something close to the Civic or here to the shop, and maybe even an apartment or just another house. But no matter what we get into house-wise, when we get in there, it'll at least have insulation, and the cost will go down by several $100s a month. Plus, if we get something smaller, we don't need something as big. Plus, we have 2 housemates staying with us right now, and if we just moved without them, and we talked to them about it, so it doesn't like curveball hit them in the face, and just moved into a place for me and Cora, we could get into someplace small, because really, we're both working so much right now that we only need a place to sleep and shower. That's it. And so, yeah. You know, I mean, we didn't even have that solution beforehand, but then all of a sudden we do, and it's like crazy because the day that it's due, that thought never even occurred to me, but my housemate is just like, hey, what if you guys did this? Just like brass tacks, made this decision, made the move. And so I called my property managers at the house there, and I said, hey, here's the thing. I know we owe you guys, but here's part of the reason we're behind is because the electric has been crazy. We don't blame you guys, whatever. It's just, it's too much. And they admitted, yeah, that's the problem they've been having with the house the whole time. They know it's a problem. They understand all this other stuff. And so they said, you've always paid rent on time. You've always been on time. You're late now. Part of it's because of the electric, all of this other stuff like that, and the store that you're opening. We're going to give you to the 15th of the next month. You can either catch up on rent then, or you can let us know whether you're staying or whether you're going. And re-signing the lease, because we're at the end of the lease. So we wouldn't, even if we leave now, we wouldn't even be breaking our lease. And I was just like, holy cow, God totally just provided. Like, he didn't provide a check to pay for a rent, but we have a grace period with the property manager to figure things out for another month and to not pay rent until then. And then we'd be due 2 months rent, but we'd have more paychecks and more time to come up with stuff. And so that's taken care of. And then just that day, like, so they're going to repossess the car on the 21st. We don't get any money for the 21st or the 22nd. It's like, yeah, it was like it is the 22nd Okay, I had a hard time sleeping the night before. I did sleep, but I had a hard time because I was just expecting the tow truck to show up at any time and repossess the car, you know? And I'm just like, man, losing that car would suck. It would be a nightmare. It'd suck. Anytime a car drove by the house, I was like, oh, I hope that's not the tow truck, you know? Anytime a car door slammed, I was like, oh, crap, I bet that's the tow truck coming up to the house to knock on our door. Well, we called them on the 22nd. They said, oh, we haven't even sent it out for repo yet, but we're going to. They're not upset or anything like that. Well, luckily, we had made enough, and there were some sales and some other things like that. We were able to actually just pull together enough to get the car payment covered. And so it took away Cora's spending money for Scotland, but at the same time, she's over there with her parents. Her parents are pretty generous, and she still has a little bit. And so what went from an impossible situation where, like, we're not going to be able to do anything, over the course of, like, a week, came up in, paid the rent on the store, so we're good for another month, paid the electric on the store, so we're good for another month. And then when we didn't have enough for the car and we didn't have enough for the apartment, we ended up running into a situation where we talked to the property managers. A new idea came up. The idea of moving came up. And then we had just enough to cover the car, even though it was days past. They still hadn't sent it out for repossession. And I was just like, God, why do we get into these situations? Why can't you just save us from these situations before they come up? Why doesn't the money just come in so we can pay these bills? Because I want to have integrity. I don't want to tell people I'm going to do something and sign paper and then not have money. And at the same time, we're tithing, we're giving to homeless people, we're moving in faith, we're blessing people, and all of this other stuff. And it's like, what do we do when we're walking out everything in faith and we're giving and we're being generous and we're tithing and all this other stuff? Do I just shut down shop and say God isn't good? And like, if you do give and you do tithe, you will be out of money. So don't tithe and don't be generous because you need to cover your bills, blah, 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 blah. No. But that's the anxiety that I have to, like, kung fu fight off, you know? And in the end, I was sitting with God today. And I was like, why was I in this spot? And God was showing, he's like, showed up revelation. Boom. He said, Alex, there's a difference between me saving you from something and me saving you in something. I think it was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I think. I get them mixed up with Ham, Shem, and Japheth. But I think it was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I think. Whatever. It doesn't matter. They went into the fire. And when they were in the fire, they looked inside and they saw a fourth figure in there, and it was God. And they weren't even burned by this insane furnace fire. Daniel went into the lion's den, and it was after a night passed that they checked on him and he wasn't dead. The Israelites were standing at the Red Sea, and the Egyptians were coming, and they crossed the Red Sea, and the Red Sea collapsed on them. God could have intervened all of these times and stopped people from even having to deal with that. He could have interjected so Daniel didn't even have to go in the lion's den. He could have stopped what was going on with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, or Ham, Shem, and Japheth, whoever it was, from even having to go into the fire. He could have just stopped the Egyptians from chasing after the Israelites. But there are times when God put on my heart, he said, I will save you from things, and there are times I will save you in things. And I realized, oh, wow, okay, what has come from the times that God's actually allowed the electric to be shut off, or allowed our rent to be late, or other stuff like that? It was because I went into that situation, I had to face my fear. I wasn't able to just escape my fear, I had to face it. And being there gave me wisdom and authority in understanding how finance works, how property managers work, how things actually are. Things that I was afraid of, like if the electric goes off, all our food's going to spoil. And in that moment realizing, oh, it's not, because the fridge is a great insulator. If I just leave the doors closed, it'll keep for days. Or, oh, what happens if I move to Redding and the night I had to sleep in my car and I realized, wow, everybody makes a big deal of people sleeping in their car as being the worst thing to happen in the world. But this thing's like a deluxe tent. I almost want to not have a tent when I go camping. I'd rather just take my car out there and sleep in the back of my car because it's almost more comfortable. You know, like put the seats down, lay back there. It's more insulated, more secure than a tent. So like whereas before I'd been like, I don't want to sleep in a car. That means I'm homeless. Oh man, I can't believe that I'm having to sleep in my car. Is now like a and I wouldn't have had that authority and that confidence if I hadn't have faced it. And so I think that there are times when everybody wants to give this message of like, you're going to be driving towards the cliff and God's going to save you before you go over. Right when you go over the cliff, God's going to grab you and scoop you up. So don't worry about your troubles because no blah, 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 blah. But I think sometimes God lets us drive off the cliff and careen into the valley below and hit the ground and explode. I think it just lets the worst thing happen. Car drives off a cliff. We're like, God, you'll catch me. And he doesn't. And we hit, and the car crashes and explodes on the ground beneath, and we're just obliterated. But a couple seconds later, we're still alive. And we stand up, and there's flaming wreckage, and the car is decimated, and we don't even have a scratch on us. And we realize, holy crap, I'm not dead. I'm not even bleeding. Dude, I'm a superhero. You know, like my skin is impenetrable and fire doesn't burn me. And I was terrified of going off the edge in a cliff with a car because it would have blown up and ripped me apart. My guts would have gone everywhere and my bones would have mangled and my shin bones would have gone through my throat and I would have just been dead. But I didn't even realize I was superhuman. Now I'll never be afraid of going off of a cliff ever again. Maybe you can't fly. You still went off the cliff and you still hit. And if you ever jump off a ledge ever again, you'll know you'll fall. But you still are impenetrable. And so you're no longer afraid of falling because you won't be crushed because you're strong. You know, like if Superman fell off a cliff or, you know, whatever. Or the Hulk did. Somehow he doesn't die. He just smashes into the ground below, but he can still get up. So I just want to encourage you guys that there's been a solution, and it hasn't been just a magic check showing up. And sometimes that does happen. But I love that I just went through this because I believe that there's encouragement there for way more people other than just a magic check showing up. It's a don't worry, because even if you hit the ground and everything explodes around you, you might still be alive in the wreckage. God might be saving you in something rather than saving you from it. And so don't worry if you're having to face something that you were hoping God would save you from ever having to face, because there may be something inside of that. There will be something inside of that. You facing that, you actually having to go into the lion's den and be with lions, that teaches you, oh, I can do this. So I love you guys, and I'm excited, and I'm so sorry that some of you have gone through the things that you did when other people have told you, oh, it's okay, God's going to rescue you at the last minute, and then he didn't, because you are loved, and if you did go through it, you're just given a measure of authority and maturity that other people maybe couldn't handle. That's why they were saved from it. They weren't ready to be saved in it. They couldn't go through it. And when we look at people that aren't mature enough to be saved in it, do we use our authority and our maturity to mock at them and lord above them and say, ha, 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 God trusts me more than you? No. Servant. Love. Get beneath them. Lift them up. Encourage them. Use your experience to bless them and encourage them to be in a place where they can be saved in something. You guys are awesome. And, yep, that's it. I got to open up my shop. I'm about 5 minutes late. What?